You guys, I need to tell you about the most humbling moment of my entire career. Picture this. I'm sitting at VidCon West, one of the biggest creator conventions in the country, and my signing table is completely empty. Not a single person in line. Zero. While other creators have fans wrapped around the building, I'm sitting there like I don't even exist. Let me back up for a second. 3 weeks before this convention, I had just hit 2.8 million followers on TikTok. My manager, Derek, was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. He kept saying things like, "This is your moment," and "VidCon is going to change everything for you." He booked me this premium signing table, ordered custom banners with my face on them, even hired a photographer to capture all the amazing fan interactions we were sure would happen. The morning of the convention, I spent 2 hours getting ready. Perfect hair, designer outfit, practiced my signature about 50 times. I was convinced this would be the day that proved I had really made it. I mean, 2.8 million people follow me, right? That has to translate to something real. Walking into the Los Angeles Convention Center that morning, the energy was absolutely electric. Thousands of fans everywhere, cosplayers in incredible outfits, the sound of excitement echoing through those massive halls. Gaming setups were drawing huge crowds. Merchandise booths had lines of people buying everything from phone cases to hoodies. The smell of overpriced convention food mixed with that weird convention center air conditioning created this unique atmosphere that screamed, "Something big is happening here." I found my table in the creator signing area, right between two other influencers who I recognized but had never actually met. To my left was this gaming creator who immediately had a line of at least 30 people. To my right, a lifestyle influencer who was already taking selfies with fans. And me? I sat down, arranged my markers for signing, put on my biggest smile, and waited, and waited, and waited some more. The first hour was the worst. I kept checking my phone, refreshing my recent TikToks that had millions of views, trying to understand how this was possible. My latest dance video had 4.2 million views and 800,000 likes. How could someone with those numbers be sitting here completely ignored? Convention staff kept walking by, and I could see it in their eyes. That mixture of pity and confusion. One volunteer even asked if I needed help finding something, clearly assuming I was lost, rather than actually supposed to be sitting at a creator table. The photographer Derek hired took exactly 3 photos of me sitting alone before awkwardly suggesting we wait for the crowd to build up. By the second hour, I started spiraling. Was my following fake? Had I somehow bought followers without realizing it? Were all those views and comments just bots? I began questioning everything about my content, my authenticity, whether I deserved any of the success I thought I had achieved. The convention was buzzing around me. Fans were screaming with excitement, meeting their favorite creators, taking photos, buying merchandise. Everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives except me. I felt like I was watching a party through a window, completely separate from all the joy and connection happening just feet away from my empty table. That's when I noticed her. This girl with thick-rimmed glasses and a vintage band t-shirt, carrying a worn backpack covered in patches from places I'd never heard of. She looked around nervously, clearly overwhelmed by all the chaos and noise. She spotted the empty chair next to my table and hesitantly sat down, pulling out this beaten-up sketchbook. She had no idea who I was supposed to be. No idea about my follower count or my viral videos or my brand partnerships. To her, I was just another person sitting at this convention. And honestly, that was exactly what I needed. Because in that moment, I realized that despite having millions of followers, I had never felt more invisible in my entire life. What happened next would completely change how I think about success, authenticity, and what it really means to connect with people. But first, I need to tell you about this girl and her incredible talent that nobody knew about. So there I am, drowning in my own self-doubt and wounded ego, when this girl opens her sketchbook and starts drawing. I'm not talking about doodles or simple sketches. This was real art. Her pencil moved across the paper like she was conducting an orchestra, creating these incredibly detailed portraits of the cosplayers walking by. I couldn't help but lean over to get a better look. The moment I did, she jumped like I'd just appeared out of nowhere. Her cheeks turned bright red and she immediately tried to close the sketchbook. "Oh, sorry," she mumbled, clearly mortified that someone had noticed her. "No, wait," I said quickly. "That's absolutely incredible. Please don't close it." She hesitated for a moment, then slowly reopened the book. What I saw inside took my breath away. Page after page of artwork that looked more real than photographs. Character studies, landscapes, portraits that captured not just how people looked, but somehow who they were as human beings. "Are you an art student?" I asked, genuinely amazed. She shook her head, looking embarrassed. "No, I'm studying accounting at community college. This is just, I don't know, something I do in my spare time." Her voice was so quiet, I had to lean in to hear her over the convention noise. "Accounting?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "But you're incredibly talented. Why aren't you in art school?" That question seemed to hit something deep inside her. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with her pencil. "My parents think art isn't practical. They want me to have a stable career, something that pays the bills." They're probably right. The way she said it broke my heart. Here was someone with genuine, extraordinary talent, and she was apologizing for it. Meanwhile, I had built a following on 15-second dance videos and trending challenges, and I was the one sitting at a creator convention. "I'm Sage, by the way," she said, finally making eye contact. "Nice to meet you, Sage. I paused, realizing I didn't want to introduce myself as an influencer. Not after the day I'd had. "I'm just someone who appreciates good art." We started talking, and I learned that Sage had grown up in a small town in Oregon. Her parents owned a hardware store and had worked their entire lives just to make ends meet. They saw her artistic abilities but couldn't understand how someone could make a living from drawing. "They're not trying to crush my dreams," she explained. "They just want me to be secure. They've seen too many people struggle." As she talked, she continued sketching, and I found myself completely mesmerized by her process. She would observe someone for just a few seconds, then capture not just their appearance, but their entire personality on paper. A nervous cosplayer became confident and heroic in her drawing. An exhausted parent looked peaceful and content. "How do you do that?" I asked, watching her bring a character to life with just a few pencil strokes. "Do what?" "See people like that. Capture who they really are, not just what they look like." Sage paused her drawing and looked around the convention center. "I guess I've always been good at watching people. When you're shy like me, you spend a lot of time observing instead of participating. You start to notice things others miss." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Here I was, someone whose entire career was built on being seen, being noticed, performing for millions of people. But when was the last time I had actually observed anything? When had I last taken the time to really see the people who followed me, to understand what they needed or wanted beyond entertainment? "I post some of my art on Instagram sometimes," Sage continued, "but I only have like 200 followers. Most of them are people from high school who probably just follow everyone they know. 200 followers. This incredibly talented artist had 200 followers while I had 2.8 million for dancing to trending songs. The irony was so painful it was almost funny. "Sage," I said, watching her add delicate shading to a portrait that was more beautiful than anything I'd ever created. "I think you're looking at this all wrong. You have a gift that could inspire thousands of people, maybe millions." She laughed, but not in a mean way. More like she couldn't even imagine such a possibility. "I don't think the world needs another struggling artist. My parents are right, I should focus on something practical." But as I watched her work, as I saw the joy in her eyes when she was creating, I realized something that would change both of our lives forever. The world didn't need another struggling artist, but it desperately needed authentic creators who had something real to offer. And sitting next to me was someone who had more authenticity in her pinky finger than I had in my entire social media presence. As Sage and I continued talking, something magical started happening that I never could have predicted. People began stopping to look at her artwork. It started with just one person, a cosplayer dressed as a character I didn't recognize, who noticed Sage sketching and asked if she could see the drawing. When Sage nervously showed her the portrait, the cosplayer's entire face lit up. "Oh my God, this is incredible. You captured the character perfectly. Can I take a picture of this?" Within minutes, word had spread, and suddenly there was a small crowd gathered around us. Not around me, around Sage. I watched in amazement as person after person complimented her work, asked questions about her technique, and begged to see more of her sketches. Sage went from being this shy, apologetic girl to someone who was absolutely glowing with confidence. Her voice got stronger, her posture straightened, and for the first time since I'd met her, she seemed to truly believe in her own talent. "You should totally start a YouTube channel," I suggested during a brief lull in the crowd. "People would love to watch you create these." Sage laughed nervously, shaking her head. "I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't know anything about cameras or editing or any of that stuff. Plus, I'm way too shy to be on camera." But I could see something in her eyes. A tiny spark of possibility that hadn't been there before. The way people had reacted to her art, The genuine excitement and appreciation had planted a seed. That's when it hit me like a freight train. Here I was, sitting with millions of followers, access to professional equipment, connections with brands and other creators, and I was using all of that for what exactly? Dance videos that would be forgotten in a week? Trending challenges that added nothing meaningful to anyone's life? Meanwhile, Sage had real talent, genuine passion, and the ability to create something that lasted, something that mattered. But she had no platform, no way to reach the people who would appreciate what she could offer. I started thinking about my content with fresh eyes, and the realization was devastating. When was the last time I had created something that actually inspired someone? When had I last made content that taught people something valuable or helped them discover a new passion? I'd gotten so caught up in the algorithm game, in chasing views and engagement metrics, that I'd completely forgotten why I started creating content in the first place. Sage showed me another sketch, this one of the entire convention center. But it wasn't just a drawing of a building. She had somehow captured the energy, the excitement, the human connections happening all around us. Groups of friends meeting their favorite creators, kids getting their first taste of fandom culture, artists like herself discovering they weren't alone in their passions. "This is what I see when I look around," she said quietly, pointing to different elements in her drawing. "All these people coming together because they love something. They're not here because they have to be. They're here because something brings them joy, and they want to share that joy with others. It's beautiful." I looked around the convention with completely new eyes. While I'd been focused on my empty table and my bruised ego, I'd missed the real magic happening everywhere around us. Friendships being formed over shared interests. Young artists finding mentors. People discovering new passions and communities they never knew existed. This girl, who didn't even know my name or my follower count, was teaching me more about content creation and authentic connection than any influencer conference or brand meeting ever had. "Sage," I said, feeling something shift inside me. "What if I told you that you've just given me the most valuable lesson about creativity I've ever received?" She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You see people, really see them. You capture not just what they look like, but who they are, what they're feeling, what makes them special. That's what's missing from so much content online. That human connection. That authenticity." As I spoke, I realized I was describing everything my own content lacked. I had millions of followers, but did any of them really know me? Did I know any of them? Or were we all just performing for each other, creating this hollow echo chamber of likes and comments that meant nothing? "I think," I continued, my voice getting stronger as the idea formed, "that you could teach people so much more than just how to draw. You could teach them how to really see the world around them, how to find beauty in everyday moments, how to connect with their own creativity." Sage was quiet for a long moment, looking down at her sketchbook. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "Do you really think so? Do you think people would actually want to learn from someone like me?" The vulnerability in her voice broke my heart. Here was someone with extraordinary talent, asking if she was worthy of sharing it with the world. Meanwhile, I'd never questioned whether my dance videos were worthy of millions of views. "Sage," I said, and I meant every word, "I think you have something that most content creators spend their entire careers trying to find. You have authenticity. You have purpose. You have the ability to make people feel something real." What I didn't tell her yet was that I was one of those content creators who had been searching for exactly what she had. And sitting next to her, watching her work, seeing the genuine joy she brought to everyone around her, I realized I had been looking for authenticity in all the wrong places. The real question was, would she be willing to help me find it? By the third hour of our conversation, I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and started recording, not for content but just to capture Sage's process as she worked on a new sketch. The way she observed people, found the perfect angle, brought characters to life with just a few pencil strokes. It was absolutely mesmerizing. "What are you doing?" she asked, noticing the camera pointed in her direction. I realized I hadn't told her the truth about who I was yet. "I'm actually a content creator," I said carefully, "and I think people would love to see real artistry in action. Would you mind if I filmed you drawing?" She hesitated, her hand freezing over the paper. "I don't know. I've never been on camera before. What if I mess up? What if people think my art is stupid?" The fear in her voice was heartbreaking because I recognized it. It was the same fear I'd felt sitting at my empty table, questioning whether anything I'd created actually mattered. But there was something different about Sage's fear. Mine was about ego and validation. Hers was about vulnerability and sharing something deeply personal with the world. "Sage," I said gently, You've been creating beautiful art for years without anyone watching. The camera doesn't change your talent. It just gives other people the chance to witness something amazing." She took a deep breath and nodded. As she started drawing, I found myself asking completely different questions than I'd ever asked in my previous videos. Not, "What's trending?" or "What will get the most views?" but, "What inspires you when you look at someone?" and, "How do you decide which details matter most?" Her answers were incredible. She talked about seeing the story behind people's expressions, about how everyone carries their experiences in the way they hold their shoulders or the look in their eyes. As she spoke, her shyness melted away, replaced by this passionate intensity that was absolutely captivating. The footage was raw and unfiltered, nothing like the polished content I usually created. Sage talking about her dreams while her hands moved across the paper, creating something beautiful in real time. Me learning about patience, about the value of creating something that would last longer than a viral moment. For the first time in months, I was making content that felt meaningful. Before I continue with what happened next, I need to ask you guys something. If this story is resonating with you, if you're learning something about authenticity and creativity like I was, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow, and honestly, after what I learned from Sage, I want to create more content that actually matters. Drop a like if you're enjoying the story, and comment below. Have you ever had someone completely change your perspective on what you do? Have you ever met someone who made you question everything you thought you knew about success? Share this video with someone who needs to hear about following their passion. Because trust me, the rest of this story gets even more incredible. As the convention started winding down, I realized I didn't want this conversation to end. Sage had unknowingly given me the biggest wake-up call of my career, and I hadn't even told her who I really was yet. "Sage," I said, my heart pounding, "I need to be completely honest with you about something." She looked up from her sketchbook, pencil still in hand. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. I'm not just any content creator. I actually have a pretty big following on social media. Like 2.8 million followers on TikTok. Her eyes widened in shock. "Wait, what? You're serious?" I showed her my phone, watching her face as she saw the numbers. The follower count. The millions of views on my recent videos. The verification checkmark next to my name. "But I don't understand," she said, looking back at my empty signing table, then at me. "If you have that many followers, why were you sitting alone? Why didn't anyone recognize you?" That question hit harder than anything else that day. Because the answer revealed everything that was wrong with the content I'd been creating. Everything that was missing from my connection with my audience. "I think," I said slowly, the realization forming as I spoke, "that people follow my content, but they don't really know me. They don't feel connected to me as a person." Sage was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she said something that completely changed how I saw everything. "Maybe that's because you haven't shown them who you really are yet." She was absolutely right. I'd been so focused on playing the algorithm game, on creating content that would get views and engagement, that I'd never actually shared my personality, my real thoughts, my authentic self with anyone. What happened next would prove that sometimes the most important moments in your life happen when you least expect them, with people who don't even know your name. The silence that followed my revelation felt like it lasted forever. Sage stared at my phone screen, then back at me, then at my empty signing table. I could see her mind working, trying to process how someone with 2.8 million followers could be sitting completely alone at a creator convention. "I don't understand," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "If all those people follow you, why aren't any of them here?" That question cut deeper than any criticism I'd ever received online, because the answer forced me to confront a truth I'd been avoiding for months. "I think," I said, my voice cracking slightly, "that they follow the content, not me. They know my dance moves and my trending videos, but they don't actually know who I am as a person." Sage closed her sketchbook and turned to face me fully. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, feeling more vulnerable than I'd felt in years. When was the last time I shared something real about myself? When did I last talk about my fears, my dreams, my actual thoughts about anything that matters? I've been so focused on creating content that gets views that I forgot to create content that connects with people. As I spoke, I realized I was admitting something I'd never said out loud before. I wake up every morning and check my analytics before I even get out of bed. I plan my entire day around what's trending, what hashtags are popular, what sounds are going viral. I've turned myself into a content machine instead of a human being. Sage listened intently, her artist's eyes studying my face like she was trying to capture something deeper than just my appearance. "That sounds exhausting," she said softly. "It is," I admitted. "And the worst part is, I thought success meant having millions of followers. But sitting here today, watching you connect with people through your art, seeing how genuinely excited they got about your work, I realized I've never felt that kind of authentic connection with my audience." "But you could," Sage said, surprising me with her directness. "You could show them who you really are. What if they don't like who I really am?" The question came out before I could stop it, revealing the fear I'd been carrying for so long. Sage was quiet for a moment, then she opened her sketchbook to a page I hadn't seen before. It was a self-portrait, but not the kind you'd expect. Instead of trying to make herself look perfect, she'd captured herself mid-laugh, with messy hair and genuine joy in her eyes. "I drew this last month," she said. "I was having a terrible day, feeling sorry for myself about the whole accounting thing, when my little nephew called and told me the silliest joke. I laughed so hard I cried, and afterward, I felt like myself again. So I drew what that felt like." She looked up at me. "I posted it on Instagram with a caption about how sometimes the best moments happen when we're not trying to be perfect. It got more likes and comments than anything I'd ever posted. People said it made them smile, that it reminded them to find joy in small things." "That's exactly what I'm talking about," I said, feeling a spark of excitement. "That's real connection. That's what I've been missing." "So what if we collaborated?" I suggested, the idea forming as I spoke. "I could help you start your art channel, teach you about cameras and editing and all that technical stuff. And maybe you could help me remember how to be authentic, how to create content that actually means something." Sage's face lit up with excitement, but then doubt crept in. "I don't know. What if people don't like my art? What if I'm not interesting enough for videos? What if I freeze up on camera?" I thought about our 3-hour conversation, about how passionate she became when talking about art, how naturally she connected with the people who'd stopped to see her work. "Sage, you've taught me more about creativity and authenticity in one afternoon than I've learned in 2 years of being an influencer. Trust me, you're more than interesting enough." "But what if I fail?" she asked, voicing the fear that I recognized all too well. "What if you don't try?" I countered. "You told me your parents want you to be secure, to have a stable career. But what's secure about spending your life doing something that doesn't fulfill you? What's stable about ignoring your gifts?" I could see her wrestling with the decision, weighing her dreams against her fears. "My parents have sacrificed so much for me," she said quietly. "They're paying for my college, working extra hours at the store. How can I tell them I want to throw that away to make art videos?" "You're not throwing anything away," I said firmly. "You're building something, and maybe if it works out you could help them too. Imagine if your art channel became successful enough that you could support them, show them that creativity can be practical too." The idea seemed to resonate with her. I could see her imagining the possibilities, the what-ifs that could change everything. "Okay," she said finally, her voice stronger than I'd heard it all day. "Let's try it, but I have one condition." "What's that?" "You have to promise me that you'll be real in your content too. No more hiding behind trends and algorithms. Show people who you actually are." As I looked at this brave, talented girl who was willing to risk everything to pursue her passion, I realized she was asking me to do the same thing, to stop hiding behind my follower count and start sharing my authentic self with the world. "Deal," I said, and I meant it. What happened next would prove that sometimes the best collaborations come from the most unexpected places. 2 weeks later, Sage and I met up at a local coffee shop in her neighborhood called Brew and Canvas. The name couldn't have been more perfect. The walls were covered with artwork from local artists, and the whole place had this creative energy that made you want to pick up a paintbrush or write poetry. I arrived early, nervous in a way I hadn't felt since my very first TikTok video. This wasn't about going viral or hitting certain metrics. This was about helping someone I genuinely cared about share her gift with the world, and honestly, I was terrified of messing it up. When Sage walked in, I could see she was nervous too. She'd brought her art supplies in that same worn backpack, but her hands were shaking slightly as she set it down. "I practiced with my phone camera like you suggested," she said, "but I kept freezing up every time I hit record." "That's completely normal," I assured her, remembering my own early struggles with camera anxiety. "The first time I filmed myself, I recorded the same 15-second clip about 30 times before I got one I didn't hate. I'd brought some basic equipment, nothing too intimidating, just good lighting and a decent microphone. Remember," I told her as we set up, "we're not trying to go viral. We're trying to connect with people who genuinely appreciate art." Her first video was going to be a simple drawing tutorial on how to sketch realistic eyes. But as soon as Sage started explaining her process, something magical happened. She completely forgot about the camera. Her voice became confident and passionate as she talked about capturing emotion through art, about how the eyes are windows to a person's soul. "When I draw someone's eyes," she said, carefully shading an eyelash, "I'm not just drawing what I see. I'm trying to capture what they're feeling, what they've experienced, what makes them uniquely them." Watching her work, I realized I was learning something profound about my own content creation. Sage showed me how to slow down, how to appreciate the process instead of just rushing to the end result. "Good art takes time," she explained while adding delicate details to the iris. "You can't rush authenticity." Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. How many times had I rushed through content just to keep up with posting schedules? How often had I sacrificed quality for quantity, authenticity for algorithm optimization? Meanwhile, I started applying what Sage was teaching me to my own content. Instead of jumping on every trend, I began sharing more personal stories. I talked about the pressure of maintaining a social media presence, the loneliness that can come with online fame, the importance of mental health in the creator space. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My engagement actually improved, even though I was posting less frequently. People started commenting with their own struggles, sharing their stories, thanking me for being real with them. But it was Sage's first video that really blew me away. When we uploaded it, I expected maybe a few hundred views, hopefully some encouraging comments. What happened instead changed both of our lives. The comments section exploded with genuine engagement. People weren't just saying "first" or dropping random emojis. They were asking detailed questions about technique, sharing their own art struggles, thanking Sage for inspiring them to pick up a pencil again after years of not drawing. "Look at this," Sage said, reading comments on her phone with tears streaming down her face. Someone said I inspired them to start drawing again after giving up for 5 years because they thought they weren't good enough. How is that even possible? I smiled, remembering how empty I'd felt despite having millions of followers. "That's the difference between views and impact," I told her. "You're changing people's lives, not just entertaining them for a few seconds." One comment particularly stood out. A woman wrote, "I'm 45 years old and always thought I was too old to learn art. Watching you explain it so patiently and passionately made me realize it's never too late to try something new. I'm ordering art supplies tonight." Sage looked up at me, her eyes shining with a mixture of disbelief and pure joy. "This feels different than anything I've ever experienced. These people don't even know me, but they're sharing such personal things." "That's because you're being vulnerable first," I explained. "You're showing them your authentic self, your passion, your process." People connect with that honesty. As we packed up our equipment that day, I realized something profound had shifted in both of us. Sage had found her voice and her confidence, and I had rediscovered what it meant to create content that actually mattered. But what happened over the next few months would prove that authentic connection creates ripple effects you never see coming. 3 months after that first video, Sage's channel had grown to 150,000 subscribers. Now, I know that might not sound massive by influencer standards, but every single one of those subscribers was genuinely engaged. Her comment sections weren't filled with spam or meaningless reactions. They were filled with people sharing their artwork, asking for advice, building a real community around creativity and self-expression. But the numbers weren't what mattered most. It was what happened to Sage as a person that truly amazed me. I'll never forget the day she called me, crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. "I did it," she kept repeating through her tears. "I actually did it." "Did what?" I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. "I quit the accounting program. I enrolled in art school, and I told my parents everything." My heart stopped. I knew how terrified she'd been about disappointing her family, about giving up the practical path they'd worked so hard to provide for her. "How did they react?" I asked, holding my breath. "My mom cried," Sage said, her voice getting steadier. But not because she was upset. She said she'd been watching my videos, reading all the comments from people I'd inspired. She told me she was proud that I had the courage to follow my dreams, something she never felt brave enough to do. The relief in Sage's voice was palpable, but what she told me next completely floored me. And then my dad said something that changed everything. He said he'd rather see me struggle doing something I love than succeed at something that makes me miserable. He told me that watching my videos reminded him why he fell in love with my mom in the first place, because she used to paint before life got in the way. Sage had not only found her own path, but she'd helped her parents rediscover parts of themselves they'd forgotten. Her mother had started painting again for the first time in 20 years. Her father had begun sharing stories about the creative dreams he'd abandoned to run the family business. Meanwhile, my own content had undergone a complete transformation. I started a series called Real Talk Tuesdays, where I discussed the behind-the-scenes reality of being a content creator. The pressure to constantly perform, the comparison trap, the importance of mental health in the influencer space, the loneliness that can come with online fame. My follower count actually decreased slightly as I shifted away from trending content, but my engagement skyrocketed. More importantly, I felt proud of what I was creating again. I was waking up excited about my content, instead of dreading the endless cycle of chasing viral moments. The turning point came when Sage and I decided to return to that same convention exactly 1 year later. I was nervous about going back to the place where I'd felt so humiliated, but Sage convinced me it would be healing. This time, everything was different. My table had a steady stream of people throughout the day. Not massive crowds like some creators, but genuine fans who connected with my new content direction. They wanted to talk about mental health, about finding authenticity in a fake world, about the real challenges of social media. These conversations were deeper and more meaningful than any interaction I'd had during my viral dance video days. But the most incredible moment happened at Sage's table. A young girl, maybe 16 years old, approached with a portfolio clutched tightly in her hands. She was shaking as she walked up to Sage, clearly nervous but determined. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely audible over the convention noise. "Are you the artist from YouTube?" Sage smiled warmly and nodded. "That's me. What's your name?" "I'm Emma," the girl said, then took a deep breath. "Your videos changed my life. I wanted to thank you." She opened her portfolio, revealing page after page of beautiful artwork, landscapes, portraits, character studies that showed incredible skill and passion. "I've been drawing since I was little," Emma continued. "But my school counselor kept telling me I needed to focus on real subjects if I wanted to get into a good college. I almost gave up on art completely. Then I found your channel." Sage's eyes filled with tears as she looked through Emma's work. "You showed me that art isn't just a hobby," Emma said. "It's a way of seeing the world, of connecting with people, of making a difference. I just got accepted to art school with a scholarship, and I wanted you to know that none of this would have happened without your inspiration." I watched Sage's face as she processed what this young artist was telling her. This was impact. This was what creating content should feel like. We weren't just accumulating views and followers anymore. We were actually changing lives, inspiring people to pursue their dreams, building something meaningful that would last long after the videos stopped playing. That evening, as we walked through the convention center, Sage pointed out all the connections happening around us, just like she had a year earlier. But this time, she was part of that magic. Young artists were approaching her, sharing their work, asking for advice, finding courage in her story. "You know what's funny?" she said, as we watched a group of aspiring creators exchanging contact information. "A year ago, you were sitting alone because people didn't really know you. Now you have fewer followers but more real fans. Sometimes losing the wrong audience is the best thing that can happen." He was absolutely right. I'd traded quantity for quality, viral moments for genuine connection, and it had made all the difference. But what happened next would prove that the ripple effects of authentic content reach further than you could ever imagine. As I'm recording this video today, exactly 18 months after that life-changing convention, I can't help but reflect on how completely everything has transformed. Sage's art channel now has over 500,000 subscribers, and next month she's launching her own online art school. She's teaching thousands of people that it's never too late to pursue your creative dreams, and honestly, watching her success fills me with more pride than any of my own viral videos ever did. But the real magic isn't in the subscriber counts or the business ventures. It's in the letters we receive almost daily from people whose lives have been changed by authentic content. Last week, Sage showed me a message that made both of us cry. A woman named Patricia wrote to tell us that watching Sage's videos had inspired her to start an art therapy program at the local children's hospital where she worked as a nurse. She said seeing how art could heal and connect people made her realize she could combine her medical background with creative healing. 30 kids have been through the program so far, Patricia wrote, and the doctors say they're seeing remarkable improvements in the children's emotional well-being. None of this would have existed without your courage to share your authentic self with the world. That's when it really hit me. The shy girl who sat next to me at that convention didn't just change my perspective on content creation. She started a ripple effect that's now touching lives we'll never even know about. My own channel has evolved in ways I never expected. I still create entertaining content, but now it has purpose behind it. I use my platform to highlight creators like Sage, to discuss mental health openly, to show the real person behind the follower count. My audience is smaller but infinitely more engaged, and most importantly, I wake up excited about what I'm creating instead of dreading another day on the content treadmill. The biggest change isn't in our careers, though. It's in our friendship. Sage taught me that success isn't measured in followers or views, but in the positive impact you have on real people's lives. She showed me that authenticity isn't a marketing strategy. It's a way of living. Yesterday we met for coffee at Brew and Canvas, the same place where we filmed her first video. The walls are still covered with local artwork, but now some of Sage's pieces hang there too, alongside work from artists who discovered their passion through her channel. "Look at this," she said, showing me a letter from a fan who had started teaching art classes at a senior center, inspired by Sage's message that creativity has no age limit. This is why we do what we do. I couldn't agree more. The girl who sat beside me that day didn't know my true identity as an influencer, but she helped me discover my true identity as a human being. She reminded me that behind every screen, every view, every like, there's a real person looking for connection, inspiration, and authenticity. Before I finish this story, I need you to do something for me. If Sage's journey and this entire experience resonates with you, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I'm committed to creating more content that matters. Content that might just change someone's life the way Sage changed mine. And I don't want you to miss it. Give this video a thumbs up if it inspired you to think differently about success and authenticity. But more importantly, I want you to comment below and tell me what's your version of Sage's art. What passion or talent are you hiding because you think it's not practical or marketable enough? What dream are you afraid to pursue because it doesn't fit society's definition of success? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their dreams matter, regardless of follower counts or social media metrics. Share it with someone who's forgotten that authenticity is more valuable than virality. And if you're inspired to start creating content around your passion, remember what Sage taught me. Focus on impact, not numbers. One person whose life you genuinely change is worth more than 1,000,000 passive viewers who scroll past without feeling anything. The girl who sat next to me at that empty table changed my entire perspective on what it means to be a content creator. Sometimes the most important conversations happen when nobody's watching, when there are no cameras rolling, when you're just two people connecting over something real and meaningful. That's the kind of influence I want to have. That's the kind of creator I want to be. And thanks to a shy girl with a sketchbook who didn't know who I was, I finally understand what true success looks like. It's not about the numbers on your screen. It's about the lives you touch, the dreams you inspire, and the authentic connections you build along the way. That's the real story behind the empty chair at the convention. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought mattered to discover what actually does.